I'm trying to see. Okay, so you can also, like, at any point if you need to turn off your webcam or anything, feel free to do that. I'm gonna share my screen in a while. So what I'm gonna start with is, as I said before, we're gonna start with Linux architecture, not necessarily understanding how to exploit them, but more of how they work and why they work like that. So whether it's user permissions, adding user, how a user interacts with different files. And then next, we're going to move into more exploits. So that will be our second video where we're actually going to focus on, it's stupid, it sounds stupid, but we're going to spend 30 minutes looking at how Google works, because we're going to start doing Google dorks, looking for exploit on exploit DV and all of that. And then we're going to move into actual Linux tools. So nmap, wfuzz, probably a little bit of Metasploit, just so that you are aware of it, because some of the hack-the-box machines will require Metasploit. And then our third one, we're actually diving into hack-the-box. So there you'll actually hack the box first to create your user account, because in hack-the-box, it's not as easy as just going to register and doing it. You have to do certain things. And then we're going to move into actually looking at machines. The goal is, by our 6th video, you should be able to do at least 2 boxes on your own. Even though I'll guide you through some of them, you should be able to get some of them. Mainly after you get in, the previous portion should be pretty easy. That's what we're focusing on today. And we're also going to kind of sprinkle that throughout our videos. So that said, let me share my screen. So we're first going to start with something super simple. And that is me creating a user account for you. But the thing is, can you see my screen right now? You should be seeing a terminal on my screen. Okay, so what I have done is, for each of our videos, we're going to have a virtual server that you are going to participate in. You're not going to use your Mac necessarily for most of it. It's mainly just going to be logging into this server. If it has a vulnerability, you're going to exploit it. Today, there is one vulnerability that at the end of this, you should be able to exploit. If not, I will guide you through that, so you won't have to worry much. So the first kind of intro to Linux is Linux runs by different users. Right now, I'm on a really bad level of user, meaning I'm running as root. You should never run things as root, because that's the most high privileged user. So if you can run anything as root, you can do a lot of things in a Linux system. We will look at that later on. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually create a user account for you, and then I will send you the password for it. So let me do that. So in Linux, to create a user account is super simple. It's just you type add user and the username. It will ask me for your password, so I'm going to have to create one for you right now. Let me do that. I'm going to use a secure one. Hopefully it works. All right. And then that should be enough. Let's give it a shot. Okay, that user's made. So I'm gonna send you your password via our chat. Hopefully the video doesn't record the chat. All right. So your IP address as well, since you're going to be SSH into that. Let's try this. Okay. So I'm assuming, have you SSH'd before into a server, or do you want me to cover that portion as well?
All right, cool. Yeah, I got the password too.
Okay, perfect. So let me make sure I share the right screen. If at any point you see things like messages showing up on my screen, let me know, because that means the screen share is messed up.
Okay.
All right, so I sent you the credentials. So I sent you your IP address and your username as well. So it's basically your first name at that point. So what we're going to do is first SSH into the server, and then I'll kind of guide you through like different things that we can do. I'm going to show things, and I'm going to make you try those things to see if it actually works. So at some point, you might have to share your screen, if that's fine with you. Mainly just your terminal. You don't need to share
Okay.
much other stuff,
Yeah.
I think. Trying to think if you need to. No. So yeah, you'll just need to share your screen at that point, or just your terminal.
Or the SSH, isn't it just like my username and then
Yeah.
at and
So
then
it's
the IP
basically going to
address?
be SSH, your username, IP, and then it's to ask you for a password. Before that, I think terminal will say something like this IP is not trusted or something, since you have never used it before. So you just have to agree for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I got it. Cool, it worked.
All right, perfect. So the first thing we're going to start is we just looked at how the add user portion works, where we're basically adding a user, but there's also more things you can do with that. So once you add a user, for example, if you try to do a pseudo user at this point, your user will not be allowed to do that. And the reason is, if you looked at my history when I was adding your account, all I did was added your current user account, right? I haven't done anything else. So what we're going to do next is look into how you'll give it a pseudo permission. In later parts of the video, we're going to discuss more into the permission models, how it works. It's basically math in Linux for permission models. You can do it different ways too, but I'll cover both ways that are crucial for it. For now, we're just going to give you a pseudo permission, since we might need that at a certain point. And I'll explain how that works. So basically, there's a binary that a root user can call called usermod, which basically allows you to modify the user in different ways. And obviously, you already know this. Linux has a lot of like different kind of tabs or tags that you can use. So basically, dash something and to do certain things. So this one is kind of self-explanatory in a way. So when you do dash A, you are saying add something for this user. And when you do Z as a capital Z, that's saying you want to add the group. So for example, in this case, you specify usermod add group pseudo to Janine's user. Once you do that, we can see what user permission you have. So for example, I'm going to make you try this. Is if I am currently logged in, right? If I type groups, it's going to tell me what my current group is. So if I go to my user and type groups, it will tell me my current group. So try doing that. Feel free to share your screen so that we can make sure it's working. And then do groups, and then let's see if it shows your changed group accounts or not.
I'm figuring out how to do. Do you have to stop sharing your screen in order for me to share, or?
I forgot this is not like Zoom where it allows multi. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, can you see? Okay, so I guess. So you said
So yeah.
If I do groups, then it'll show.
Okay, so it's
and then if I.
That's weird and interesting. Try logging out and logging back in, because it seems like your groups hasn't refreshed yet.
Okay, and then try groups.
There you go. So now you see that previously you had the Janine user group. Now you actually have Janine and pseudo, right? So it added more permissions too. That's only for your user account. However, like let's say you are in a Linux server and you find there are other users. So let's say my username Rohan, for example, and you want to see that person's groups. You can also do the same thing. So you'll just do groups and then type the username at that point. So for example, if you do groups Rohan, you should be able to see my groups at that point. Right? So you're able to see those changes. Cool. It's useful because then let's say like if you have a list of users and you want to see who has a higher privilege than other, or if you notice that only one group, like let's say the group internal can run certain commands that you cannot at that point, you can see if the user has that, and then you can start exploiting against them. However, I have a question for you.
Can you see like a list
so
of
we're
groups?
going to do that as well. So that's something super useful you can do is instead of just going after each user, you can dump every users. And that's usually through a file in Linux. So most of the Linux system works with a file structure. It's like a database, but it's something you can usually read. So for example, let's see, entire screen. I'm going to take over and screen 2.
Yeah, go.
So there's a couple of ways you can do that. We're going to cover some of them. So one of them is easily through a file. So if you go to etc folder, before we do that, let's cover the root folder of Linux. So there's different kind of folders in Linux. When you do cd/, you are usually on a root folder. It's like if you think of a binary tree, for example, in software engineering.
Yeah.
It's the root node. So it's where everything starts from, and then you can start going through to different leaves. So these folders are like where all your stuff are. If you go to etc, there will be multiple files, and there's a file called group. So if we do cat group, we'll see bunch of groups here, right? So you can see all the groups. And then interesting thing about that is, like, let's say now I want to see what groups you're part of without using the groups command. I can actually do cat group and then use grep. So if I do that, it will tell me what groups you're part of. So it's kind of useful that way, because then now you can like look through different groups. I can just do cat group grep sudo if I want to see if that group even exists, and then it will tell me that as well. So that's by catting a file. So feel free to try it out. I'll recommend trying it out from the root instead of going to etc. That way you kind of have an idea of the folder structure. Or actually do just cd and then go to your home directory and then try catting group from there. Because I want you to have a practice of going to the root node and catting it there.
Yeah.
All right. Were you able to cat that?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the server is kind of slow right now. Did it work or?
Can I share you my screen?
Yeah. Let me stop mine. I wish Hangouts will just like automatically kick you out, or kick me out into it. Yeah, that'll be really fun.
Okay. So you said from the home, right?
Yeah.
So I did like cat, I did root and then etc and then group. Right?
Yeah.
And then sudo?
No, so if you just do group, so group is like so grep is to see if you wanna find certain things. But if you just do cat etc group, it should be able to print out because it's a txt file kind of format.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So the reason I use grep is like if there's a lot of things, you can just use grep to look for certain things. So it's easier that way.
And is grep like a search?
Yeah, so grep is a search. There's two ways you can do it, which we'll learn today. One is by piping it. So that's the one you were trying to do before, where you put like the vertical line and then grep. Or you can just use grep as its own. So it's a function or a Linux command on its own. And it's super useful if you use it on its own. Because one thing good is, like, let's say you want to search every single Linux file for a certain keyword, like password, for example. If it finds them, it will tell you the file and the line number. So we're going to look over that as well today.
Okay.
Before we jump into that, there's another super interesting thing that we're going to look into. For example, with this, you notice that if you do cat group, you'll see there's the sudo user, right? But let's say you don't want to cat the whole group file and you just want to see which users have sudo. Because right now you'll see that it says like sudo x, Janine, and Rohan. But in a realistic scenario, or like somewhere you're like, oh, I don't want to print all these files. I just want to look for one group and see who is there. because you
Yeah.
already know what group you're going after.
Yeah.
There's a really useful Linux command that I learned today. I did not know it existed.
Okay.
Is a command called getent. So it's like GETENT. What it basically does, it's like grep, so it combines a search functionality to all text files or all or database-like files in Linux. So since group is a database type file, you can actually do getent group sudo, and it will tell you that. So you don't have to necessarily go through the file at that point. You can just do that, and you can identify like which users are there, and after that you can do your attack. So if I was looking for this one, work on this one, like let's say if I'm looking for a group internal and see the list of users, it will let me know. So you can also use this when next week when we start scripting some of our exploits, it will be useful to use this, because then you can just grep or use the getent function to find certain groups and exploit that based on that users.
But you'd have to like cd into like etc and before doing that, right?
Not
like
actually.
you'd have
So
to go to that directory.
No, so that's the best part about getent. I forgot to mention that is it automatically looks for files in those directories. So for example, if you look at my current one, I'm on home Rohan, but when I do getent group, it just goes to that. So that way, it's useful in a way like you don't necessarily have to worry about either going there or catting with /etc password or anything.
Yeah.
You can just do getent to do that. So that's something I really like. Yeah, it makes it really easy, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Now that we have done that, I'm going through my notes here to see certain things that we need to focus on. We'll look into how to identify users in a Linux. So I added your user account, I added mine. There are multiple ways you can see how many users exist in a system. One of them, I'll actually ask you to see if you know of certain right now, if there are certain ways you can identify. If not, we're going to cover every single one of them.
Okay. I don't think I know any.
Okay, so I'll give you a hint for this one. We'll kind of play a game here. So if you look at my current directory, it's giving something out, right? It's telling where I am.
Yeah.
Will that be something of a use to identify other users on a system?
Can you?
So look at my current directory, right?
Yeah, it tells you like your Rohan, because that's your user. That's where you are.
Yeah. Exactly. So it tells me like I'm in /home/Rohan. So where do you think your user account's home file will be most likely at?
Isn't it my user, you said?
Yeah, for your specific user.
Wouldn't it just be at the root?
Not exactly. So try doing pwd on yours and let's see where it is. See if that gives it out to you.
It's at the
home. You don't
home
have to share the screen. Exactly. So you see a pattern on that, right? Yours also is in home, mine's also in home. So if we do ls/home, you notice there's another user there. So that's one way of identifying. So if you do
really
yeah, so it's like, think of home as literally a home, right? If you have a user, they're gonna need a home. So they're most likely going to be in that folder. It's not always going to be there. It could be in different places. But if you look at the add user function that I use, where I did not specify anything, it has it by default.
Okay.
Now something, let me see. Actually, let me add another user since I have to show this again. All right. So if you notice, when I'm adding a user, there's certain things Linux gives me as an option. For example, full name. So I can add Jake Peralta or whatever I want.
Yeah.
Room number, let's just put 123. You can put phone number, so something along that line. And the reason is it's not always required, but it's something like a sysadmin can use to identify certain things about a user. So if I'm managing a company and I want to see which person owns the user Jack2, I can probably use that information. So that's what we're going to look into next. Is there's a specific file in Linux that has all the users and their information hosted. It's similar to group, but it's called passwd. So if you go to Etsy and if you cat password on there, you'll see it prints out pretty much a TXT format of different Linux users here, right? So if we break it down, we can.
And that's all their passwords?
It won't have their passwords. because that will make it insecure. So unless you are a root user, you cannot
Yeah.
see a user's password. And even then, Linux is clever. It encrypts their password, so you won't be able to see that even as a root user. But if you have a root account,
Okay.
like if you have root at that point, you can pretty much change anyone's password. So I'll show you that as well. For example, let's like if we just take a look at Etsy password. There's something that's interesting here that also gives out how the home directory works. Is if you look at the users that I recently added,
Yeah.
you'll see it has like home Jake, home Janine, home Rohan, and home Jake too, right? So
Yeah.
these new users are going to be there. So just by looking at this pattern, where do you think the root users folder is at?
The roots users folder? Is it like, do you mean
Yes.
like the bin and stuff?
So no. So in Linux, you'll have like I added your account, but if you look at my user account right now, if I do who am I, I'm logged in
Yeah.
as root, right, which is the highest privileged
Oh,
user. It also
yeah.
needs a folder. So if I do cd, it takes me to my folder. Where do you think
Yeah.
that would be at?
That's the root, isn't it?
It's not the root node, like not the bin where you see ls and everything. But if you
Yeah.
take a look at password, the Etsy password file, it tells you where it is. So if you look at it, it says /root. So in the root node, instead of going to home, you'll actually go to cd/root. And that's where you like
Oh,
the root users things are. And
okay.
we'll cover this later on, but if I do su Rohan, and if I try to go to root, you'll notice it gives me a permission denied. Um,
Okay.
so if I do it again, just in case, if you look at this, and the reason behind that is only the root user can access those files. Any other users
Okay.
will not be able to.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
I'm
And
gonna
since you're
try
the
to
root user, you can do it.
exactly. So if I exit out of this, that's another useful thing. If you notice, I have been doing constantly is using this function called su,
Yeah.
which is basically switch user. So if you try doing that, it's
Oh,
gonna ask you for your like let's say if you do that command, it's gonna ask you for
yeah.
my password. And the reason is you're
Okay.
not a trusted user. But if you do su Rohan as a root user, since you're root, you can pretty much get
Yeah.
access with any account. So I can jump into your
Oh,
account.
okay.
So that's also why like having a root account is bad. Or this one actually asked me for your password. So that's okay. You see why that's doing that. If you look at
Because
this one, it's asking. I'll let you answer that.
is it because you switched to user Rojan before you
Mhm.
switched?
Yep. So now if I were to exit out of this, that should fail. And if I do from here, it will dump me into your account. There we go. Right.
Yeah.
So as a root user, you can jump between other users' account. But with other
Yeah.
users,
Okay.
you have to have their password.
Okay, I
So now
understand.
that we take a look at that, let's look at Etsy password again, because I want to break some things down for you for that. Since Etsy
Yeah.
password is the interesting thing about Etsy password is it's readable by any user. You don't have to be a sudo. You don't have to be a root. Pretty much every user can read that on the Linux system. That's why whenever,
Okay.
let's say you jump into a box, you can actually
Hmm.
use that to look into like what users are there, how they are configured. We're going to actually look into how you can exploit
Okay.
that today, since you'll be
Okay.
using an exploit for this. But if we
Okay.
take a look at this, I'm going to focus on like one line. So let's focus on your user account, right? Can you
Okay.
see the
Yeah.
highlighted?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. All right, perfect. So here are certain things that are important on it. The first part is basically your username. So it does not have
Yeah.
anything sensitive. It's not important at all. The
Yeah.
second part is where it gets exciting or interesting is if you look at it, it says X. That's
Hmm.
usually where a user password is.
Okay.
Now, the reason it says X is it's saying the password is not on this file, it's somewhere else. And in
Okay.
Linux, the passwords are usually on a file called sado. And that's
Okay.
only readable by root. So that's where like
Okay.
your sensitive contents are. If you can
Okay.
root those files as a root, then you can do a lot of different attacks there. The second, these two things are your user ID and your group ID. So if you take a look at this, pretty
Okay.
much like, or your primary group ID. So if you notice, you can be in different groups. You are a part of your own group and you're part of sudo. But your primary group is usually considered to be your
Hmm.
own group. So if I do groups Janine, you'll notice that you are part of your own group. So every time a user is created, they are given their own group, which has the regular permission that every other user will have as well. That's why you see like your group ID and your user ID to be the same in most cases. The other info, if you take a note, is like if we look at this last account I added, is where the information I added. So if I'm looking for a user info, that's where I'll usually find. It's not a requirement. So if you notice, like I just have our names there instead of the full detail. In other places, like in companies, might be as full setup if they're using that system for something specific. And your next part of the Etsy password will be your home directory, wherever it is. So in our cases, by default, it's in home. In other cases, it could be somewhere else. And then after that, you'll notice there's a bin bash, right? So that's basically telling when you SSH, there's different terminals you can run. So if I do bin sh, you notice that I have a different format of a terminal now. I don't have like my name or anything like that. It's own binary. And if I switch back, all I have to do is bin bash, and I'm back into it. So now when I do Etsy password, that's where like it is specified. So whenever you SSH as a user, if it has bin bash, you'll probably jump into the bash terminal. If not, you're going to jump into something else. Now, when you take a look at this, you notice some users have bin bash and some don't, right? For example, if we look at this daemon, it has user sbin no login. The reason behind this are, as I said earlier, with Etsy password, they're not necessarily your regular users. It can also be like a system user. So let's say if I install MySQL, for example, which is a database server, it's going to have its own user running it. So those are like system users. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, that part kind of makes sense,
Okay. So when you install something, the reason is Linux runs on the idea of list permission model, where you don't want to give it more permission than it needs. So a MySQL user only needs a MySQL access, so you'll limit that. And the idea behind that is like, let's say if MySQL is only interacting with the database, there's no point for it to SSH or anyone being able to SSH as a MySQL user. So that's where the no login binary comes to use. What that means is you will not be able to log in as that user no matter what via SSH. So for example, in this case, I have Apache installed, which is a web server. It runs with www.data, but there's no requirement for www.data to be a SSH user for me to like SSH www.data and the IP address. So that's why you notice it. Yeah, so it's not a valid SSH user. It is a valid user in terms of it can do certain things. So its home directory, as you see, is var www, right? Backup user is var backups. But there's no point for me to SSH as www.data and interact with the Linux terminal when it's only designed to control like this specific instance. So that's why you see the nullity. Does everything so far?
Yeah. How about bin/false?
So bin/false is actually something I don't know. So I was gonna look it up right now. Let's look it up. I think it's specific to how SSH. Okay, so this is also pretty much similar. Bin false, basically, if you try to SSH in, it's going to make it look like you got in, and then it will log you out right away. So it basically is saying you also have no terminal access. And these ones, like nobody, which means it doesn't need to log in. But if you look at certain ones, these are more of system users, like systemd files, which are a little bit different than just having www.data. So that's why they are bin false. So these are more of like bus system, which is for message queues and other things. FTP also, usually you use FTP user, not SSH, so it's a different protocol. That's why you don't need a terminal for that as well. So that's where like all of these are.
So the most important things that you should look out for is like the bin bash then. That's things to look out for the users.
So bin bash, where the user IDs, sometimes those could highlight some important things. One example of that is, this does not happen super common, is there was a exploit on a Linux system. So basically Linux runs with integer numbers, and if you created an account, so you have to be a sudo for this anyways, is if you assign a user ID, so usually as a root or a sudo user, you can change the user ID of a person. And the problem with that was, if you give it a really long integer that Linux did not support because it had like a check for it, it will automatically consider it as a root user. So that kind of messed people up, because if you had a sudo user, you could try, like, let's say if you hacked into a computer network, has a sudo permission, and you want to create a backdoor, you just change the user ID of like some random user, and you could just come back and be root every time. So you don't even have to worry. So that's where like these user IDs can be sensitive, is if you see something super large, you probably want to research into it. And then we're going to jump into it a little bit later, is this X right here. The reason behind that is if there's no X, so let's say if it just said Jake and then it had a colon and a colon, so like let's say if it was empty, you can actually log in as that user without a password.
Oh, a
so you don't
password?
even need it.
Okay. That's saying that they don't have a password then, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So you can see when it's going to be bad is like, let's say if I'm a malicious user and this system is misconfigured where I can write to the password file, then I can just remove the X and I can log in as root. So that's where like it can get really bad if you can edit password files. Usually only a root users to be able to do that, not the other users. So that's why it's more secure. So now something we're going to look into is, as a root user, you can actually print out these. So now if you take a look at it, what do you think, like what stands out for you when I did the cat of this file?
Like the hashing?
Yes. So that also,
so you said really long.
Yeah, so that's also something interesting file, or it's a super sensitive file in Linux, is only certain user can read it. So if I do lsla of executable, you can notice that only the root user can read. I'm going to explain that more later on, like specific how to distinguish that. But right now, take a look at it. There's RW and R only in this section, which means only the root user can read and write on it, and then the group shadow can read that. And if we take a look at get ent group shadow, or I misspelled that, you notice there's no user assigned to it. So if a user is assigned to the group shadow, then they can obviously read this file at that point. And the crazy part about this file is because you have the hash of the password, you can use certain tools in Kali to actually crack the password if it's insecure. So let's say if a user is using password 1, you can actually crack that. Does that make sense?
That's really cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Do you have any questions so far before we jump into more other stuff?
No, I'm good so far.
Okay, perfect.
That's cool.
So we covered password. I covered how exploiting works. So you have the encrypted user and executable, and only the root user. So if you if there's ever a case where executable is readable by other users, then you definitely know to look at that right away. And we're going to cover how you can identify those situations too. Now we're going to do some math. Let's do it.
Nice.
So this math is the easiest math you can ever do. This is basically adding 3 different numbers to understand how a Linux permission works. So there's 2 different specific functions in Linux. So I'm going to create a file in your directory. Let's see. So if we do a lsla of test.txt, which I just made, you notice it already has a default permission assigned to it. And in this case, the owner can read and write to it. And the second part of it, so if you notice there's dashes, right? Dashes means you do not have those permissions. So let's focus on the first or the second 3, I guess. Let's ignore the first dash. So let's just focus on this for now. So this one is usually it's always going to be RWX. So R means read, and then write and execute. In this case, the owner, so the first part of it is always the owner of the file. So in this case, it will be root, can read and write to it. The group, in this case, so the second part is always a group. So that's 3 right there. Can read and cannot write or execute. And same thing with others. So this last part is what's important, is this does not mean just your account. It means every single account in Linux on this system. So whether my account, Jake's account, or any account can read to that file. So for example, if I sue Jake, I think that's the right account. I believe we still be able to output that. So in this case, because it's an empty file, it just prints out empty. So that's why it's important is if you ever have a system file or a file in your system that can be read by other users. So let's say if you put a password there, then possibly I could exploit that. So what I want you to do
Okay.
is see if you can write to that file. So try adding
Okay.
like a text to that file and see if it works.
To the Janine
Yeah,
one,
so
right?
on your folder there should be a test.txt file. See if you can write to that.
Okay. Okay, so just yeah, okay. This is read only.
Okay, perfect. So that's what I wanted to kind of highlight is since I made that, only I can edit or change it. So for example, now we're going to take a look at modifying it. So there's a couple of ways you can modify a file's permission.
Okay.
If you take a look at this, it says right now we have that. So there's two different functions in Kali or not Kali, in Linux. One is chown and another is
Okay.
CSMOD. So ch is as it sounds like, it basically means chains.
Okay.
OWN or own means change the owner. And then
Okay.
CSMOD means change the modes of it.
Okay.
So what modes means are basically like these three things. So the read, write, execute
Yeah.
for different users.
Okay.
And ch owns
Mm-hmm.
means just for like the ownership. So instead of having root, I could potentially have something like Janine. And at this point, the file is read writable by the owner. So see if you can modify that file now. I think we should be able to modify it.
Okay, so since I'm the owner of the Janine account, I'm allowed to read and write.
Yeah. So since you are the current your current user is Janine and you're part in the group Janine too, so you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Cool, it worked.
Okay. So another thing we can look into is looking at groups wise, right? I hope I didn't forget my password. Okay, let's try this.
A little bit.
So if I change this to sudo, you'll notice it kind of changes here. Now, you can definitely write to it, and a sudo user can read on it. In this case, it won't be a lot of difference since we haven't modified the last bit. But in the end, when we modify it, we still be able to see a change. So what we're going to focus now is a little bit change out here and focus on CSMOD, since that's the important, like that's kind of interesting part of it, I guess. CSMOD is basically changing the mod.
Yeah.
So this part is it runs on a short form. So the first three is U, basically just a letter U. The second part is G, so that stands for group. And the third part is O. So the third part is just basically O, which means others.
Others? Okay.
Yeah, so does that make sense so far?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when I do CSMOD, what I can do is this is the easiest way you can do it. And remember, is if I do RWX, and let's say if I change group to read write, and then O to -R. I think I have to specify the file name. So now if we take a look at it, you'll see a change in the mods, right?
Yeah.
So
so -R just said subtract, get rid of the read permission? Yeah.
So basically, if you want to remove a permission, you can do that. Let's say if you already knew what permission to add, you can just do plus instead of like doing the whole RWX thing. So you can do R plus W or something along that line. If I want to remove like negative, or if I want to remove write from groups, what shall I do then?
Then would you just do like -W?
Let's try it. Exactly. And that worked, right? So the group can now only read on it. So that's one way to do it. So what I want you to do next is actually create a file on your directory and then give it a read, write, execute for user groups and others. So everyone should be able to read and write on it. Everyone should be able, or your users should be able to read and write, and so does your group. So pretty much a full-on root security permission on that. And feel free to share your screen on that part.
I will. Cool. Can you Awesome. So should I just create another
Yeah.
text file?
Yeah. So you can create any file. You can create any name on it, so it doesn't matter.
So all I have to do is just save the file, right? Oh,
Yeah.
all I have to do is create it, right? And then change the reading, right? My bad.
Exactly.
Anyways, how can I see the permissions again?
Oh, I should have covered that. Thank you. Yeah. So in order to see it, there's a command. So you'll do ls
Okay.
and then space -l and the file name.
Okay. Okay. So right now I
So
have read write permissions. Other group members have read write permissions, and then
group members
others
of
have just
what group?
people like the people who are in the users, other users.
Yeah. So other users can read it, right? And
Okay.
then
Yeah. Then is the middle part. I thought it was a group.
yeah. So which group in this case? What will be like the
Would it
group
be?
name?
Wouldn't it just be like, you know how mine is like Janine : Janine? Is the second part, isn't it group or something?
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. So you got it right. So if you take a look at it right now, it says like Janine. So first is your
Yeah.
username, second is your group. So pretty much if there's
Yeah.
any other user on that group, they'll be able to
In the
read and
group.
write to it.
Okay, cool. And then so to
Perfect.
change it, I forgot the command to.
So it will be, so it's easier to remember. Think of the permissions as mods or modes. So you're
Oh,
just
there you
changing the
go.
mod
Change
to
mode. Yeah,
CSMOD.
there you go.
Exactly.
So chmod, and then for user, you said do you want read
Read, write,
write and
execute. Yeah, throughout
execute,
the.
right?
It's X
I don't.
instead of E. It will be X.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. Do you separate it by commas or do you space?
Yeah, you separate it by commas.
And then group is also read write X, and then O. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure to specify the file name at the end.
Oh, okay. Oh, at the end?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So now you see that
Awesome.
everyone right. And that's also like, it
Yeah.
kind of gives you a hint that it has a root security if you look at the coloring of the file.
Yeah.
That sometimes kind of gives it away. If it's green, it means it probably has a really loose security there.
Okay.
In this case, even though I made you do execute, it does not change a lot because execute is only if it's a binary or if it's doing some kind of like if it's a program, then only you want to give it execute permission. Otherwise, you don't have to worry about that. So we'll take a look at that in a bit about that. But before we jump, actually, let's do it right now. So let's say if I create, I'm going to create a file. I don't have to share the screen for this. I'm just going to do it real quick.
Oh, I can't even see that. No, there you go. Go for it.
Come on. So it's there. So there should be a, if you look at your current, directory, there should be a bash script called test.sh.
Oh, let me see.
Try doing ls.
Oh.
Okay. So you see that, right? So it's first, let's look at what permission it has. So feel free to print that out, and then we'll start debugging it from there.
Print out which one? Sorry.
Oh, no, print out the permission of the file. So not necessarily the code, just the file. Yeah.
For the test.sh?
Yeah. And then break it down for me. Explain like what it's doing.
Okay. So I have read write permissions. The root group has write permissions, and then other users have write permissions. Not read permissions, my bad.
Okay, so you're kind of close. You first said that you have a read write permission on that, right?
Yeah.
Why do you have that?
Isn't it? Because I'm logged in as Janine, so therefore, oh, JK, it's the root
Yep.
has read write permissions,
Yep.
because that's
So
the.
so you have a read permission. You did not have a write yet. So if you had, like, let's say if I allowed it to be writable, then yes, you'll have that, right? Right now you do not own that. I own that still. So
Yeah,
once
because of this part, right?
let me
This
go
is
back.
root.
Yeah. So if you look at it,
Okay.
the owner of the file is root right now. So if
Yeah. Okay.
what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you the permission. So I'm gonna change it to Janine, and run that. So feel free to print out the permissions now. Let's see if it changed.
Yeah.
Perfect. So
My
now
bad.
you are aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's still fine. There we go.
Yeah.
So now if we
Cool.
take a look at it, you can read and write on it. And when it comes to a binary or an executable in Linux, the way you want to execute it is by using // and the file name. So try doing /test.sh and see if that works for you.
And what does that do again?
So that allows you to execute the executable file. So in this case, because it's a bash script, you'll just do /test.sh. So if you have like a executable as in like a software, a program that you want to run, you don't have to specify the, usually you won't have to specify the compiler to use for it. It will automatically know what to use. In this case, you got an error when you ran it, right? Why do you think
Yeah, I got permission denied. Because I don't have permission to execute.
Exactly. So give yourself that permission and see if it works now.
Okay, so chmod, and then do I have to do the other ones, or can I just say user?
I think that should be enough. Let's go with that for
Okay.
now.
Cool. And then I can try it now.
Yeah. There
Awesome.
you go. So it's able to execute that.
Yeah.
There's also another way. You don't have to, like, necessarily you won't even have to specify the u equals. You can just do chmod plus x and the file name, and it will just add that permission because it will assume you're trying to.
Sorry, say it one more time. You said I can do a chmod and then
plus
x.
Yeah, and the file name.
Oh, okay. And that will just do it for the first. It would just know that's for the user.
Yeah, so that's for adding it. See if you can use the same idea to remove the executable permission now.
Sorry, say you cut off. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so let's say if you want to remove the execute permission for your user, how will you do that without using the u equals? So instead of doing plus x, you can do something else. So see
just do minus x.
Yeah, so try doing that and see if that works.
Okay.
So you notice now you know.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's super useful because then like now you don't have to worry about memorizing doing u equals rwx and all of those because that will help you with that.
Yeah.
So now next.
Okay, that's really cool. But then if you wanted to specify for the group and the others, you would have to do U and O, correct? Okay. Okay. That's cool.
Now we have covered this. We're going to do math with CSMOD. So CSMOD, I don't know if I said this previously, it runs in two different ways. So one is the UZO kind of idea where you do U equals RWX, G equals RWX, and the rest that we just did. Another one is via math.
Yeah.
So you might have seen this before where you have done like CSMOD 777 and the file name when you're trying to do something and you're trying to like see if some system can read your file or something. Basically, those 777 are addition of certain rules and you're outputting that. So if we take a look at, I'm going to share my screen.
Oh yeah, we get to both share our screen, by the way.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen and you're sharing your screen. I can see your screen.
Hell yeah. All right, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Where's your screen? Let me load that up. Oh, I have to change something. Give me a sec. I'm going to change the layout of this. I was trying to do that before.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, I cannot pin it. Okay. So you can still see my screen then, right?
Yeah, I can still see your screen.
Perfect. I hope it's Let me pin that then. Okay. I don't know how the recording is going to come, but we'll see. So at this point, if we want to change, so if let's do lsl of test.sh, you notice it has rw and dash 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 for others, or rw dash r dash. So these specific permission modes like read, write, and execute has their own numberings to it. So R is actually 4, W is actually 2, and execute equals 1. So if you want to give like other user permissions, then what you can do is you can add these numbers based on what you want to do. So for example, if I want to give, if I want to change and say your user can only read the file, I can just give it 4. And other users, let's say I want them to be able to execute. So like, let's say your group can only read it 2, but everyone else should be able to read, write, and execute. I'll do csmod 447 test.sh. Now, if we take a look at lsl test.sh, you'll notice it automatically changed here, right? So now it has a different permission.
Okay, that's cool. So you just add more numbers if you want them to be.
Yeah, so you'll add 421, right? So if you want the read only, then you'll just give it 4. But if you want it to read, write, and execute, you'll give it a 7. So instead of like, it makes it faster too, because now you don't have to do group equals or other equals. You can just give it a number and it will know what to do.
Yeah.
So for example, I'm going to quiz you on this since I can see your screen now. Where the hell is your screen? There we go. Pin. Change the permission of that test sh where your current user can read and write to it, and no one else can read and write or execute. So everyone else has like no permission, only your user, not even your group. So your groups will not be able to see it either.
Is it like 600 and then test.sh?
Yep, exactly. So now if you notice, it's super restricted, right?
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to cover that is it becomes useful with some sensitive files. So for example, bash history files, SSH config files. If you create a SSH keys in, like a private key, if you have passwords stored, if you only give it read write for your user, unless someone else has access to it, they won't be able to read it. If it's a root, then that's a different case. If I'm root, then I should be able to read that file. So for example, right now I can do cat test sh, and I can still see like the command that's being outputted there. So root user basically bypasses all of those, but everyone else is restricted by that. So if I were to go Rohan and then do what is test.sh, it'll say permission denied. So it's useful that way because like your bash history file, for example, I still not be able to read it from my user. Same with other users in this case.
This is super cool.
All right, so we got that. So I want you to look at the etc SATA file and tell me what the permission for that file is.
Okay. Isn't it? Oh. Shadow on this file?
Yeah.
It is?
Yes, SHAD.
Oh, okay.
So SATA is a TXT file.
Oh, it is? Okay, so then.
Yeah.
Cool. So root has, so root has read write permissions. Shadow has reading permissions, and then others have no, like they're just restricted from everything.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Okay, let's try. So you know you have been using ls-l for a while now. There's something you can do is if you want to see for your directory, like in general, you can actually do that without going to the folder. Like let's say if you want to list for each file on the etc folder, you can actually just use lsl and the folder name /* or something along that line. See if you can do that to list out permissions for every single file on the etc folder. So go to your home directory first, and then
And
without
then,
changing your directory, print out permissions for every single file on the etc folder.
okay. Uh, there
There
it
you
is.
go. And then there's something interesting you'll notice is
Yeah, the D.
exactly what do you think that stands for?
Hmm, let me see. I don't know.
What's your
Is
first guess when you look at that?
it just domain? That when I think of D, I think of domain.
Close. In this case, it's the directory. So if you look at the files
There
next
you
to
go.
it,
Of course.
you see how they are
Yeah.
like color coded, right? So they have like the blue color on it. So they are directory files
Oh,
or directories. You can
that
just go
makes
inside them.
that makes sense.
So if you look at there's one that's L, right? Right above
Yeah, this
with
one.
the V. Yeah, what do you think that one's for? Look at how the file is
Uh,
shown to you and see if you can identify what
yeah.
it's for.
So it's going into an Etsy folder, then alternatives.
Yeah, so
Uh,
it's basically linking or mapping it. So, like when we do C++ file, you can link different files together. It's similar to that.
yeah.
So the
Okay.
VTRGV file, it's basically a symlink, which means it's a symbol of a link to that folder. So whenever you modify it or execute it, it is actually hitting the Etsy alternatives and that file. So that's why the
Okay.
L stands for that is you can list out like the linked files. Those can be useful too, because if you can modify like a linked file of a root user or something, then you can usually get a root privilege escalation from that, which we'll probably see when we do hack the box. So those ones you'll automatically like see as you go on with a lot of practice, and we'll be able to practice those.
Okay, cool.
All right, so we did that. Did I miss anything? Okay, now we're gonna learn some Linux commands, and this is where it gets a lot of info being thrown at you for this. Because we're going to cover one command has so with
Cool.
Linux, there's each command is like a software, so you can do a lot of things with it. If you have used for example, with Mac,
Mm-hmm.
when finding files, you can look for certain extension types. You can look for who owns that file, where it is, and all of that. And Linux has the same thing, but if you're doing a command line,
Yeah.
it's just adding more tags to it to kind of narrow down your search at that point. So we're going to cover that. We're going to go with
Okay.
grep, since grep is super fun. We're actually going to practice
Yeah.
grep a lot today, and piping a little
Cool.
bit. Not a lot of piping, since usually it's pretty straightforward. If you already
Mm-hmm.
have experience with some of these, let me know, that we wouldn't have to cover it, because then we can just focus on something else. So the first
Okay.
thing I'll do is I'll just make you do a test.
Okay.
Is I want you to use the echo command on Linux to write to a file. So have you done that before or not? Just the first question.
Okay. Not. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think I've done it
So at that
before.
point, we're actually going to cover it then. Give me a second. So echo is basically in Linux, like echo is similar to system out print or cout or anything like that in C. So you're
Yeah.
basically printing out the string.
Yeah.
But let's say if I want to add the output of that, right? You want
Yeah.
to add it to a file. There's a couple of ways you can do it. There's two ways main. There's this less than sign or greater than sign, where you can specify the file name. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, now if I do test.txt, you'll see it writes
Okay.
to it. And if I do it again,
Okay, that makes
here's
sense.
where it gets interesting, is if you look at it, it replaced it, right? So that's the thing you want to be careful. And I have made this
Okay.
mistake a lot. I have made this mistake a lot. I'm not gonna lie on there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can actually with this, if you accidentally put this, you're gonna overwrite the file. So if you have something sensitive there, it's gonna go away.
Yeah.
So what you want to do instead is
Yeah.
there's another. You'll just add one more of that. So if I do this, now you're actually adding to the line. So you see it adds to the next line of it. So try
Okay.
that just to make sure you get the habit
That's
of it,
cool.
and then we're gonna move. So that one's like a super easy thing to understand. Just wanted to cover it quick because sometimes you might need those.
Yeah, that's true.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm just gonna add to this one then. Um,
Perfect. So with
Cool.
echo, this is only for when you are printing out a string to a file, right? Or like some kind of user
Yeah.
string. So you can do echo OK and then print that out. But let's say if you want to merge files, if you want to get the output of one file, so let's say in this case I have test.txt, and then also cat or print that content to another file, how do you think we'll be able to do it?
Can you do like echo the file name and then the greater than sign and then into a different file?
Pretty close. So
So
instead of
I
echo,
guess,
just look at what you did with when you were printing out the file name or printing out the file content. You use a certain Linux command.
okay.
So try using that instead. See if that will work.
For print, because when I printed the file, I used cat.
Yeah. So try doing just do cat, the file name, and those arrow keys.
Like that. And
Yep. So now you have a file called. Oh, make sure to remove. Yeah.
oh, I just have to name it something.
Oh, you should be good there. Yeah, that should be good.
Yeah, my bad. So then if I do cat test one.
There you go. So it seems like test one.
Oh, cool.
So if you one thing that you noticed is it has 2 times, right? Why do you think that's the case?
Is it I don't think there was anything in there before. Is it because of the 2 arrows?
No, it's because you see how in the first it says txt no such file or directory. So what happened here is it actually is trying to write to multiple places. So when you give it test1.txt, it writes there and it tries to like cat the txt file. So what it did here, what actually happened is it cats the test.txt, puts it content on test1.txt, and that command is
and
done.
then try to do it. Yeah, okay.
And then
I tried to do it for the second file, but it didn't exist.
Exactly. So it tries to print out the second file, but since it doesn't exist, that happened. So when you ran it second times, you have multiple lines of those.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
that's cool.
That one
I didn't know cat could do that. I thought it was just to print out, not to copy.
So if we take a look at this, give me a second. Kind of starting to crack up right now, but that's fine. You'll know exactly why when I show this. Okay, let me go to Rohan. You can still see my screen, right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so if I print out my bash history file, you see how it has all of these, right? Now let's say if you if I want to empty it out, how will I do it at that point? You could delete it.
You told me. Didn't you say but you use something else though. You like set it equal to null.
Yeah, so there's 2 ways you could do it. One is you saw how we did like or how there was a linked file before on when you were doing Etsy.
Yeah.
So you could always link your bash history to dev null. Yeah. So for example, if I print out dev null, it's basically an empty file. It doesn't have anything on it. So if I want to empty out my bash history, instead of using the double sign, I'll use one sign and then just do .bash history. And now if I do cat.bash history, it still be empty. So now it's gone, right? Another way you could.
And is that copying everything in the cat in the dev null to your bash history?
Yeah. So basically, since it's an empty file, it's just going to be an empty text or empty history. Another way you could potentially still do is just using echo. It's not something I'll recommend. One thing I'll recommend is for you to look into sim linking files and actually linking your bash history to dev null, because that way it's always going to be empty. It's for your local computers, it's fine to have bash history because you're constantly going to use your terminal. But if you're on a server and you want to like make sure your passwords are secure, that you're not disclosing anything out, then you probably want to make sure it's pointing to dev null.
Okay, well, that's cool.
So that was something I just wanted to cover from security point. Okay, we're going to ignore pipes for now. We're going to do that later on. We're going to do find, since find is going to be fun. So find is pretty much what
Okay.
it means. Actually, before find, let's get into something else. So if you, damn, I'm debating if I want to go with find or this first. Okay, let's go with this. So when you did cat, for example, right? Or when you do cat,
Yeah.
some file like etc password, or if you want to echo something, they're usually running a software. They're running a binary. And there are a couple of ways you can
Yeah.
like, so let's say you are on a system and you want to find where these files are, like where cat is running from,
Hmm.
right? Because it's a software. What you can do is you can just type wait and then cat, and it'll actually tell you where it's running at. So it's useful because
Oh,
if you want to
cool.
find like where this cat file is coming from, where this binary is located, or if you find that you change something in your system and it's giving you errors now, it says cat not found or something, or command not found, then you want to see if it
Yeah.
actually exists. So you'll just do which. If I do like Python 3, it'll tell me where that's coming from, right? If I give it a
Okay.
function that doesn't even exist, like when I do which docker, it comes out empty. So that means it doesn't even exist. And in relation to that, there's something that's important on this, and you have probably used this before, is when you export environment variables, there's a specific thing that's always important to take note of, is your path, uh, path environment
Yeah.
variable. So if you notice, there's bunch of them listed here. There's home rohan bin, home rohan local bin, user local s bin, and all of these. So how it works is,
Hmm.
something really interesting about Linux is if it cannot find a software in one folder, it will go for another one. So let's say if I try doing cat and cat's not on home rohan bin, it goes to home rohan local bin and it looks for it
Uh,
there.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why like we'll see at the end of it,
Hmm.
it finds and runs it from slash bin, right? So slash user bin or slash other bins. So that's where it pulls all
Yeah.
of these. And these are important because let's take a scenario, for example. This has actually happened in a hack the box, is you have a binary. So Python 3, for example, usually executes when
Yeah.
I do which Python 3, it comes from user bin. And if I do env, if you take a look at it,
Yeah.
user bin is like all the way down here, right? So let's
Yeah.
say if there's Python 3 available on home rohan bin, for example, and
Yeah.
which should be easy to make. So if I make a folder called bin and go to bin and create a binary called nano python 3, let's see if that works. I don't know for sure if it's gonna work, but let's give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Good, that did not work. Well, that's fine. I think it has to be a specific binary that I have to modify. So the reason I wanted to cover
Okay.
that is, let's say if there was a binary Python 3 that I could modify, I'm going to actually look into
Yeah.
it after this because I want to find why it didn't work. The
Yeah.
reason it's important is if I can modify that file, then I can make it run that instead of the main user bin, right? So if I'm
Yeah.
already logged in as that user, if there's another path that I can write to or add like a root path or something and run those files, then you can exploit and get a privesc with that. So we're going to
Hmm.
actually, in about third or fourth video, we're going to probably look at hack the box that actually has that, since that will
Okay.
be, that's a way of exploiting things, is like how environment variables are made or how your path is designed. So that's why I
Hmm.
wanted to cover the which right away. And now we're going to go for find. So if we look at where find is, you can just say which find, and it will tell you it's running from this.
Okay.
All right. So
Yeah.
now find is pretty much a search thing, similar to going on your Finder in Mac or in Windows. You can search for things. You can find specific files with like
Hmm.
extension of image or something like that. You can do something similar. So let's say if in this directory I create a, so this is also another thing I noticed is when you're creating the text file, you use Vim for that. If you're creating an empty one, you can just use touch and
Yeah.
it'll actually just create it. So if I
Yeah.
do this, I have
Yeah.
that there, right? And it's an image file. So
Yeah.
let's say if I wanted to find like, let's imagine this has hundreds of JPEG files and I want to find, or it has hundreds of files, there's one JPEG file. What I can do is define dot, which means current directory, dash name. So you're looking for like specific names and you put a star.jpg. So star means wildcard. Look for everything that ends with a .jpg. So as soon as I
Yeah.
do that, you'll notice it's going to give me in the current directory. So that's something I also didn't cover before. Is let me do that real quick. Is if you take a look at when I do lsla, you notice there's these two files, right? Or files, quote unquote. You see a dot and a dot dot. So that's basically saying like a directory before and current directory. So let's say if you want to find like the permission of your current directory, if you do lsla, this is saying like, hey, your directory has this permission and directory that supersedes that. So it's basically directory, subdirectory, and all of that. So a parent directory of that has this permission. So that's why like when I did find dot, that's saying only in this file, nowhere else. So I just wanted to look in, if you do pwd, which means your current directory, and if I do find dot name.
You're saying the dot is for the current directory?
Yeah. And if we go a little bit back, okay, I probably have to be root for this. Let's go and touch a test2.jpg. And if I go to cd rohan to dot dot name, I think that's the work still. Give me. So now in this case, it goes behind my directory. So I'm on Rohan's directory, but it goes behind where it's home, and it goes through every single directories there. So it goes through your account, it goes through my account, and it goes through that directory itself. So if there's a JPEG there, it's going to show me that. If there's a JPEG or image file on your account, it's going to show me that. And same thing with my account as well.
Okay, that's cool.
Does that make sense? Is there anything that's confusing yet?
No, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to look into next is same with find, because find is really big. It has a lot of things. So one thing that's something I really like is find also allows you to search for files that a specific user owns. So for example, if I go to your directory, and then we do lsl, we see there are like certain files that you own, right? For example, .sh. And there's most likely, if I do find, if I go to the root of the Linux system, and if I do find /name, I bet we're going to see a bunch of sh. So you notice there's so many sh files here. And pain, right? It's like looking for what, needle in a haystack kind of thing, if I want to find for a file own. So what we can actually do is we can use another tag called user, and I can give your username to it. So at this point, it's going to every single file. Let me do this again so it's cleaner. And it's going to give me only the files that you own. So it won't necessarily be it won't show me by any other user. So it will be only for your user. It could be different groups, but it has to be owned by you. So if I go to home, I think we had you notice it has one file called sudo, or owned by sudo, right? So I want you to use, this is basically a hint. Look at this specific command that I ran. Write a similar command that's going to look for txt files or .txt files owned by the group sudo, not the user, but group.
So let me make sure I'm on. So there's a find / because we're looking for the root.
Yeah, right? So we want to find it on whole Linux.
.sh,
we're looking for text files, not sh. We're looking for text at this point.
TXT files, and then instead of user, can't we just do group? And sudo.
There's something missing on that command. Look back at the command I gave and see if there's.
I can't see your screen anymore.
Oh, what the hell? Okay, let's get back.
Because you're looking at my screen.
Oh, yeah, because I'm sharing my screen. Okay, I know what happened.
Oh, okay.
So you see there's something missing here, right?
The name?
Yes.
There you go.
So try doing that and hit enter, and let's see what happens there. Okay, now you see there's another junk that you're seeing, right? It's saying permission denied for all of these because you're not a root user. And that's something sad. When you first start with find, it makes it look like you're going to get a lot of junk before you get a valid data. So we're going to actually clear it out. So that's another thing I like about Linux terminals is you can clear out things easily. They have different syntax for it. So there's a number called 2, which basically is for std error outs. So any kind of error outs that comes is usually handled by the process or some kind of a function called 2. I don't know exactly what it is called. And you use the same thing, the caret sign, and you take it to dev null. So what this does is it says, run this command, and if there's any error, throw it to dev null. So try doing that and see if that clears it.
Okay. So, sorry, what does 2 mean again?
So 2 is for any kind of errors. So if there's permission denied, it cannot hit a folder, or some folder is acting up, then it's gonna error out. So that's what 2 does.
Okay, so 2 then dev/null, or is it?
Make sure you put, yeah, there you go. Got it.
Like that?
Yep. So now you see it's super clean. You got what you need.
Oh, but now your dev null is not empty, right?
It will always be empty. So dev null is always written back as empty. So for example, if you do cat/dev null, the file is always designed to be empty. It will not have any content to it.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
So that's why you're basically. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really cool. Oh yeah, because I'm like, I thought that you're like writing into the dev null file, but if it's always going to be empty, that's good to get rid of your errors that way.
So it's basically like you're throwing the error to a trash. It doesn't matter to you. Like if there's something that matters, then you probably want to still take a look at it. But if you know like you don't care about permission denied, then you can just trash it to dev null. Now sometimes you might.
Okay, that's cool.
This is something extra out of this is if sometimes you might just want to run the command and actually not see anything. At that point, if you just and then dev null, it's just gonna run it and that's all. It's not gonna show you any input or like any valid input outputs or error outputs.
What's the point then?
So that's just sometimes like if you want to see if the command works, if you get like how long it takes. So just for like debugging and stuff, usually it's not useful to do it if you just want to see data, right? At that point, you're losing all your data. And then one is just for std outs. So those ones will only show you if there's a specific kind of like print file commands that's being run, then only it will show you that. So if I do 2, now I should be able to see just your file, right? So that's something.
What does 1 do?
So 1 is for std out. So if there's any kind of script that's printing out a function, so if it's a print, system out prints, d out, all of those, it's gonna go. So it's basically like where all these outputs are going. So we looked at how to find by user, how to find by that. So what I wanted to do is find every single image file in the system. So every single JPEG file, just so that we can do a review of it real quick.
Don't you just switch this to JPEG?
For this one, JPG, look for that one.
And what does name mean or do?
So that so name is you're telling find to go through each file, check its name, and see if it matches the syntax you're giving it. So since you're giving it *.jpg, it's saying go through the name as long as it has .jpg on it, print it out, kind of scenario.
Okay. So a lot of permission denied. I can do the other thing, and it's still like the 2.
Yeah, so it's still clear it out when you do that.
Whoa.
There we go. So now you're able to only see those. There's something I'm going to cover. Let's make sure it works before I do this. All right. So did you see what I just did here? On this bit right here.
Yeah, you put parentheses around it.
Yeah. So this is another interesting thing with Linux is you can combine different functions and print out its result to different things. So ls-l is something we have been using to see like the permission model of a file, right? So to see who can read, write, who can execute.
Yeah.
So what this is actually doing is when you put a $sign and the parenthesis around and put a command inside, it's going to run that command first, gets it output. So which in this case will just be like these files. So you see home, Rohan, test, temp, and all of that. Once it gets that, it sends it like each individual one of those outputs to this function. So now what it's doing is it grabs home Janine test and it runs ls-test out on that. The reason it's useful is now, like, let's say if you're looking for files and you want to look for permissions, this is perfect for that, right? You don't have to worry about manually listing permission for each and every single one of them. Let's see if we can do an example.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do this. What I wanted to do is for each of these JPEG files, so something similar to this, we're going to combine what we have learned so far. I want you to echo a string to each and every single one of these JPEG. Even though JPEG are supposed to be image, we're just going to echo to it. So see if you can do that.
Okay. So then wouldn't it just be like echo $? Would we still have to use? We'd still have to find the JPEG files first.
So you'll put that on the parenthesis sign.
And
there's something you're missing on it. Reread your command and see if you can figure out what you're missing on that.
So I'm trying to echo.
So remember we had.
Oh, do I have to?
Yep. There you go.
Use the. Okay.
What the?
Is that?
Yeah, let's figure that out. I have not seen that before. So let's take a look at it again. Might be that echo doesn't work with that. We'll see.
Because it's a JPEG?
That, or like it's just trying to write to the files. Yeah, it seems like it's something ambiguous redirect. Oh, it might be because we're already outputting to dev null and we're trying to do more. Let's try just trying to do cat. See if that goes. Okay, so cat works. Let's look into this because I've never seen this before. Ambiguous redirect echo that. Still didn't work. Okay, we'll probably take a look at it later on because this one I'll have to look into it. I think I kind of figured it out. It looks like it's probably because of this. Nope, okay. We'll take a look at it later on. I'll post that on the notes as well. So we did that. Okay, we're gonna look into permission search. So we did find with users. Now the next thing we wanna look at is, let's say you wanna list every single file that has like the really loose permissions, right? So for example, if I take a look at here, we had one of your file that has everyone can read, write, and execute to it.
Yeah.
So in order to find those, what I can do is to find dot, and instead of name, at this point, all you have to do is perm, which means permission. And let's say you do 777, which stands for read, write, execute.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if we do that, it's going to give me only those files. Now I can also do that with this. So that will give me every single file that's read, write, executable throughout. So we're seeing there's a lot of files because most files most likely will have that since you have to run them anyways. And it has like certain permission requirements to it nonetheless. So what I want you to do is I'm going to create. Okay, let's do this. Touch test from the text. So first, tell me what this does. What kind of permission am I giving it when I give it 624?
So 6 is read write for the user, and then for the group, you're just giving it.
You're cutting off a lot. Give me a second.
Read.
There we go.
Or so write permission. Oh, okay. So for the group, you're only giving it write permission, right? Because 4 is and
Yeah,
then
you got it
for
right.
the others, you're giving it read permission.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when I do this and do lsl test as perm.text, you'll notice, yeah, it has read write. A group can write to it, others can only read on it. So we did that. Try to use this. Actually, give me a sec. I'm gonna make you do a CTF right away. Let me stop my screen sharing. I'm gonna create a file in some obscure place with some permission level, and I want you to find it.
Oh no.
Let's see where I still create it.
Okay.
Oh, that's easy there. So I give it. Let me make sure this actually works. All right, sweet. So there's a file that I made. It's a TXT file, and every user, everyone pretty much can read it. They cannot write or execute, they can only read it. So use your find to see if you can find that file.
Okay.
You can combine, so you won't have to do the dollar or parenthesis sign anymore, right? We learned the dash perm, so you can combine that with the name and see if you can identify that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you said rewrite permissions.
Everyone can only read it.
For the user, read, write, and execute, or
just read. So everyone has only read. No one can write. No one can execute.
Okay. Okay. So read is 4. Oh no, that's a lot of files though.
So I give you a hint also saying it's a txt file. So see if you can add more things to your find command.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Exactly.
Okay. Can I also do this as well?
You don't have to do
like,
a
can I
dash
keep
or
adding
slash
more?
anymore. Yeah.
Also equals
so yeah, dash
name,
but don't put a slash on it.
Okay.
So make sure it's a dash name, because you did like dash
name.
You don't have to do a slash though.
Oh, so you.
Yeah, and you can let's say if there was more cases where you're looking for. There you go.
The flag.txt.
Sweet. So now you're able to identify, right? It's easier to do it. Now try to use the dollar and parenthesis sign to cap the content of that file. So let's say you don't know the name of it, but you just want to print it out as you run the command. See if you can do it in one line command instead of like finding the name and then catting it later on.
So isn't it like and then you just do cat?
Yep.
Nice.
There you go. So that way it's easier now. Like if you're looking for certain things, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah.
The
Oh, that's
Permison
cool.
model also has two different. It has oh, so let me make you do this. All right, we're gonna exploit a little bit. I want to do a test to see how much attention you have paid so far. So I
I
want
like how you
you.
put easy in the flag.
All right, all right. So trying to see what I did previously. Give me a second. My screen's not shared, right?
Okay.
No. Okay, good.
No.
Because I have a vulnerability I added for you, so we're gonna see if we can do it right now. Okay.
Okay.
How can I do this? All right. Oh shit. That's fine. I still have covered this before, but I think you'll get it. Ooh. All right. So what we're gonna do is I need you to exploit something
Okay.
for this. So far we have covered like different files in Linux that are sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to. I'm changing the file as we speak, so give me a second. I want to make it easier. Okay, there we go. All right, so I want you to basically, based on what we have covered so far, like different files, when we added a user, we looked into how you can identify users, where they are stored, and all of that. Use that to and the find. You can use the find command if you want. You don't necessarily have to, but it might make it easy. And see if you can find a vulnerable file, a file that's already in Linux by default, and see if you can exploit it. So we have covered, like, I think we have covered main two files that were interesting per se, and you can use a find for that. You can go through each directories, but basically we have also talked about loot security, where I said like if everyone can read, write, and execute, that could be an issue for certain files. So see if you can use those different hints and see if you can find that exploit.
Okay. Okay. So what's it called?
And feel free to do like a debug
know.
on your current directory, because I think one of your file has like read, write, execute. So see if you can use that as your rubber ducky to make sure it works, like your command works, and then you can move to that.
Okay. I think I know what you mean.
Okay.
So I know like if it's called, you can like cat like the if you go on the Etsy file.
Uh-huh.
And then there's like two, like shadow and what was it? The one to see like users. It was like cat.
I could tell you, but you could use find
No,
to
don't tell me.
identify that too.
Oh, okay.
Or you could use grep. You could probably use grep to like cat every file and look for like your username or something, right? Because that file is gonna have a username nonetheless.
Okay. I don't even know if that's right.
It's probably right. It's going through the files, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but you could do that, or I still have covered pipe for that.
And you said
pipe for this.
I remember a little bit of the. Oh, it was past. It was. Isn't it past SW? Yeah, that one.
Yep.
So then can I just like cat?
Okay, so you're able to print, but every user is allowed to do that though, because password doesn't have sensitive things on it, right?
Doesn't it also But doesn't it tell you like all the new users that were added?
But that's just basically for enumeration. Now, let's say let's say from your user account, you want to go to my account, like root account or something.
Oh.
By default, you won't be able to do that. So without using sudo, forget you have a sudo. I gave you sudo for a future, but forget about that.
Yeah.
Try looking into like permission models. That's your big hint for this.
Permission. Okay.
For different files, and see if any
for
file.
the users.
For users, for all the files in Etsy, and see if any of the files stands out for you. It could be for this file, it could be for Sado, it could be for main.
Okay.
So what you can look for is,
okay,
since you already know like 777 is read write execute, and that's the most like the worst security model, I guess we could call it. You will try finding every file in Etsy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can do like find root perm 777. And then just get. Okay, that's a lot. But now they're TXT files.
It could be TXT, but if you notice, Etsy doesn't always have TXT file, right? By default, Linux systems do not call themselves like .txt. So if you're specifically looking for Etsy directory, you can just do find/Etsy instead of doing /1 on that.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Because then that just makes it.
There you go. So now, like,
okay,
yeah. So do that and see, like, in this one, you actually have to read through the names, even though it's a lot. See any of them probably like stands out to your based on what we have covered today.
Okay. I'm just okay, so. Let's start from the. Try to start from the beginning. Can I even go all the way? Okay.
You could also like try looking for those specific files we talked about today. So that would probably also make it easier. Or this would actually give it out pretty fast.
You can do that with name, right?
You could use name, yeah. So you could just look for the specific file, or what you can do is you can write that command, like the find those, and then do the pipe, which is basically the vertical sign, and then grep and the file name. So at the end of after dev null, try doing do the pipe, which is basically the vertical sign, and then grep and the file name. So if you're looking for specific files, that way you can see if that file is in that result or not.
Okay, I'm trying to think of the file. But
you were on the right file before. What file were you looking at? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we know that exists, so we can we cat into it?
So we did do that before, but what else is interesting about the current permission of this file? Look on.
But it has all the permissions.
So as your user, what can you actually do for this? Since it has 777, can you do certain things to this file?
So can't we do? Yeah, we can read and write into the file.
Okay.
Or we can read the file. That means.
Yeah. So read.
So we can change like the password if you wanted to.
So you're able to write to it, right? So try going to the file to write it.
Can we?
Echoing might work, but you don't want to risk like.
But then. Yeah.
To try editing the file directly. It's like a TXT file.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
it is.
Okay.
So
do slash. You forgot a slash on there.
But there's nothing. Oh.
Okay. So you are here at this point. We covered something about passwords on the password file, and I said there could be a way you could exploit it. What was the things we looked into for that?
You said you can like delete the X.
Yeah.
So then you can just like you can log in.
So try deleting like the X for root or for other users if you want.
So like Rojan.
That works. Yep, and then
Then
right
speaking
to
the
that. So let's see. Yeah, see if that
it.
works. All right, now just do like sudo Rohan and
That
see
is
if.
weird.
Make sure there's a space after
Oh
the dash.
shoot.
No, you're
Oh,
still at
shoot.
Janine. You're still at your account.
Oh.
Oh, what the hell? It's not be.
Oh, okay. Still need a password.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a look at that. It's not be asking you for a password. Oh, I think you have to reconfigure the password or Etsy password file once you change it. So we'll do that right now. Okay, I'm gonna try something real quick as Rohan to make sure. Because usually with Etsy password, there's a specific. Yeah. Okay. I know exactly what we're doing. Okay. That's P. Permission denied. Etsy password is unchanged. Huh. Okay, let me just try doing nano directly. So we tried changing it for my account, right? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna try doing Jake.
Mm-hmm.
This should have worked. User has been VPW. ReadWrite execute by every single user. All right. So what I'm trying to look at right now is usually you have to use BIPW to edit the password files. But in this case, it's not letting me do that manually. So we're going to try to see why it's not doing that. Try going to Rohan again. Let's see if it does it.
Okay.
No, okay. I think I just realized.
This
I think I know
software
why
just
it's
asking.
trying to go based on Etsy SATA file. And since it still has my password encrypted there, it's not going to work.
Oh.
So I'm going to try seeing if that's the issue.
So I have to change the shadow
which
file.
you still not have permission
Change
for
the
that.
shadow file.
Let's take a look at it.
I don't think I do.
Yeah, but we can try to. I should be able to edit it because I want to figure this out. I have done this in the past.
Shadow's a TXT
Yeah, so
file,
all of these
right?
are like a plain text file. Password also groups and all of them.
Okay.
So okay, writable Etsy password. That's what we're looking at. Password. Oh, interesting. So it seems like we can add new accounts and give them root, but I don't see a way to remove that. So that's why it's not working. So let's try doing something like,
Okay.
what's the password for this? Yeah, this one's going to be a little bit longer than I thought it was, but this is fine. Yeah, let's see, password. That's what we're looking at. So if I add a user Tom, give it a password, and then I'm going to share my screen if this works. Okay, there we go. We got it. Okay, so I'm going to show you something. I just realized how to do this. Let me share my screen. Because this one's a little bit, oh, is my screen shared? No, it's not. Okay.
No.
Share now, screen 2. So what we can do instead of using this asterisk is there's another thing we learned. I didn't actually cover this, but we're going to learn now, is if you look at the bottom, I added this new user here.
Yeah.
Now, remember how X means it's on the shadow file? You can actually give it an encrypted password. So this is an encrypted format. You can use like Python to encrypt this, or Perl to encrypt your plain text password to that format. And if you notice, it has a 0 and 0 for a user ID and group ID. So in Linux, a user ID 0 means it's a root by default. So if you look at root's user, they're also 0, 0.
Oh, okay.
So if I do that, I'm telling it like, hey, user ID is 0, it's going to run bin bash, execute from the root directory. So since I did that, if I go sudo-tom, provide the password I use, I think that was the password, it takes me as root directly. And the reason behind that is because I give it the user ID of 0. Cool. So if I do who am I, I'm root, I can cat etc. At that point, I should be able to, there you go. So,
wait, but then that means you can like access all the everything when you do that, right? When you go as root.
So you are the highest privilege user at that point.
So that's another way to exploit it then. Yeah.
So I knew writable
because you added that user.
So I knew it was possible. I'm still going to look into the deleting part because that has worked in the past, where you just remove the X and you can log in as root. I'm not sure why it asks for password for that. I'm going to try one thing last because we tried editing a specific users. I'm going to try editing directly roots and see if that does anything changes. No, that's your password root. Nope, it still asks for password. Okay, I'll take a look at that later on. So we did that. We found by permissions. Now we're going to look into grep, since grep is another thing that you really want to have big use of. So if I clear my screen, grep can run in 2 ways. So we looked at the piping function where you can do cat, let's say like if I do etc password and grep for my username, right? So then you can see that. So that's where like when you forgot the name of the file, I was giving you a hint of just doing cat etc and then grepping for your name. Let's do this. Let's see, like that. It's gonna try to go through it and it will tell me like where it was from. So it found like some files. It found the, I think that's the group file. There should be a password file somewhere on this. But you can use that to like identify the file names. This ones, if you notice, does not give us the file name. So that's one thing I don't like with the piping is it will think you are outputting everything to one function instead of like different files. So if you notice, it just gave me that, but I don't know where that's from, right? It just tells me, hey, I found a match. So that's where the grep function in general comes to use. Because like, let's say if I go to etc, what I can do is I can do grep -n -r, meaning recursive. So it's going to go through all the directories. -n, it's give me the line number as well. So if I do this and do this and do that, it's going to go through all of them and it tells me where it found it. So it found it on this file, on password on line 32 and all of that. So it's useful that way because it's useful even for programming. For example, if you need an error, it will tell you like where it is at. It will tell you the exact file, the exact line, and the content of it. So just a real quick pop quiz. If you notice I'm getting permission denied, how will I clean this out?
So then you just do 2 greater than /dev/null.
Okay, perfect. And now we're just seeing these. So that makes it really easy to clean it. I want you to do something similar. What I want you to do is instead of etc, try to do it on the whole Linux system and look for every single file that has the word Jake written on it. So Jake.
Okay.
Try to identify that.
Okay. So
let me show you the command one more time. So something similar to this, but for every single file in the system.
So -n, what does -n mean again?
So -n will give you the line number for that file. So
okay, there you go, the line number.
File, yeah.
Okay. Something like that, right? Because here you're looking at the root. Last time you had like /etc.
Yeah.
There you go.
Perfect. So you're gonna see like other places because it also matches those words. So you can ignore those. I think if you add a space or something, usually it will ignore it.
Oh, okay.
Let me take a look.
Isn't this kind of like a Control F kind of thing?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. Yeah, you're literally doing Control F on Linux.
Okay.
I want to see why it's giving us there. Okay, so in this one, just to see your hacker mindset, I guess a little bit. When you look at the output, is there some certain outputs that look interesting to you?
Maybe this like hash function.
All right.
This
yes.
hash.
Yes. So that one's. I think that's. I'm thinking if I added more. No, I think that should be it. So what that one is in Apache, when you run a web server, you can add a password requirement for each of the directory. So let's say if you're visiting the website, it's probably going to ask you for a username and a password sometimes that shows up on a pop-up. It's not like a logging in thing. And that's basically the encrypted password for a user. So the reason it's useful is if you're on a system, like let's say you're logged in as Janine and you want to go to Jake's account, and if that's Jake's password encrypted and he uses it everywhere, if you can crack it, so let's say if it's like password 123, and you crack it with some kind of a tool that will learn in about second video-ish, then you can actually find passwords for other user that way. So that's something I wanted to add. Like it's more for recon. You can identify different things with that. So the grep one is super useful. I had to use this recently because we're doing a hack the box machine and we're looking for, there were like about 1,000 PSP files, and we didn't want to print out every single one of them. We just wanted to print out where the password, I guess, like the keyword password occurs. And the best way to do it was through grep. So I usually use pipe for it. The problem with that was it didn't give me the file name because I didn't ask for it. So instead of that, I decided to use the grep -n -r and then underscore password to look for like database. Because if you write a PSP, sometimes people tend to put their password on the PSP directly when connecting to the license database. So that's where we found the password and went further. Like that's where the user account password was. So that's why I wanted to cover that today.
Damn. Okay, that's cool.
All right, so we did that. I think we pretty much did most of it. There's one last thing. So hidden files. These are useful because they are going to have, you can exit that command. It's still running because there's thousands of files to go through. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. So just do Control-C and you should be good there. Let me exit out here. So hidden files, if you notice when we do LSL on a current directory, wherever we are, it's going to give us all the files there. But something interesting is if you do LSLA, it also tells you like where the, for example, bash history, right? That's a hidden file. It doesn't usually show up on your result right away. The reason I want to cover this is it's not on this box yet, but in future it might. Hint, hint, I guess. If you set up AWS, for example, AWS runs on CLI. So if I install AWS CLI right now, I have not done this yet. Okay. I still not have ran it as root, but that's fine for this. Um, so if I do pip3 install AWS CLI, it will install the CLI for that. There we go. So AWS CLI is basically if you're interacting with AWS files or anything like that, it will be useful because you can run API keys or API requests to AWS directly. So that's where AWS S3 LS or something. If you do LSLA, because I haven't configured it yet, it won't show up here, but you could have like a cd.aws file, which could have private keys for AWS accounts. So those will be useful to read at. So I'm pretty sure you have already looked at hidden files before, like bash histories are common. .ssh folder is your hidden file too. So for example, if you have ever generated a private key for a Linux system, then you're going to have a .ssh on your current account. And that's going to have your private key and public key. Have you done private key, public key before? If not, we can cover that today.
No.
Okay, so we're going to do that. So in order to do it, what we're going to do is make you put your public key on our server. So if you log out of our server and go, so if you're on that, do SSH dash keygen without this.
Sorry, what?
So without the space, let me log out as well. Oh, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
Have to find the password. All right. Damn, I opened a lot of terminals. Okay. What the hell? Why is it unknown? That's shady. What the? Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to do some research today because this is not good. All right. If we do SSH-keysing, it will start generating a private key. So do that first. Just run SSH-keysing.
Yeah.
Actually, before you do that, let's make sure you don't have one currently because it's gonna replace that. So Control-C it.
Oh, okay.
And then do LSLA. Let's see. You don't have a SSH.
Is staff the group name?
Yeah. So if we take a look at a Mac, yeah. So staff will be a group name. I'm not sure why Mac has that as a group. I'm assuming instead of like creating your own user group, it adds you there. Not 100% sure why. I have seen that before. It is interesting, but yeah. So you see like you have bash history. So GSH history is another one for if you use GSH shell. So different shell will have their own history. You actually do have a SSH folder. So go to that. It seems like you already have a private public key pair. Let me see. Yeah.
Sorry.
So just do ls on that. And then. Oh, no, you don't. Okay, so that's another one is known host. It's basically a list of IP address you have SSH'd into in the past. It could have like our IP address, school network if you ever did one, like when you did your assignments or anything like that. So that could be there. If you want to generate, so let's just do SSH-keygen. And it will ask where to save. You can just hit enter. So by default, it's always saved on the .ssh ID or underscore RSA file. If you want to make it secure, you can give it a passphrase. You don't have to. It's not required. All right. So now if you do LSLA, it changes. You can see like it has a different one. So we're not gonna. So make sure you don't on this video since it's going public. Do not cat your ID RSA. I'm just gonna like.
Okay.
The reason is if you cat it, someone's gonna pause this video on YouTube and print it out, like type it out.
Yeah.
Because I have done that. ID RSA is your private key, and your .pub is something that you can actually share. So you can give it out to servers, and that also kind of shows you, like, right? Like if you look at your ID RSA permission, only you can read write it. Not even your group can read write that.
Yeah.
The reason is like in case of Mac, I'm assuming staff, like if you create another user, they're also going to be in the staff group. So they don't want you or other users to see your ID RSA file or your private key. So that's why it's limited. The public key, however, anyone can read that. It's a public info. So what I want you to do is to We can do it multiple ways. We're just going to take the easier route today, and then next week I'm going to cover the SSH, different SSH commands. So just do cat id underscore rsa.pub. So you'll notice it gives out a SSH RSA public key. So you'll just copy that all the way from like RSA to your router.home section.
This part, right?
You'll copy starting with SSH-RSA.
Oh,
so
okay.
that basically tells like which algorithm was used to encrypt your public key or create a public key private key pair. So now go back into our server. So SSH back into it.
I need to go to the chat. Okay, I'm back on the server.
All right, give me a sec. I'm gonna log back into.
Should I save this password?
Yes, I'll recommend that. I can change it at any point if we need to, but crap.
I'll save it. Yeah.
Can you do cat etc password real quick?
Yeah.
Go all the way up for root. Can you add the X on the root? Because I removed it, I cannot SSH anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Thank God I gave it a full edit permission.
Isn't it cat? Oh yeah. Let's see.
I was like, why is this password not working? I literally pasted it from LastPass, but
that's really funny. Yeah, I put an X.
okay, there we go.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm hoping that was the case because it worked now right after you changed it.
Yeah, that's really funny.
So we're gonna create, so on your directory, on your home directory for your user, make a file called .ssh. So the reason I'm making you do this right now is, oh yeah, this will be fine. This will help because you won't have to memorize your password. So just do make directory, so mkdir .ssh, and it will create the.
Okay.
And inside that, create a file called authorized underscore keys. So it doesn't have to be like .txt, just vim authorized. Yeah, inside the SSH, just vim authorized underscore keys.
Oh, okay, vim authorized.
Yeah. And do you have your public key still copied?
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, you probably have the password copied, huh?
Yeah, I do.
You can probably.
I can open another terminal.
Okay, that could be useful. There's another easier way to transfer your public key, but we'll cover that on the next video because there's actually a link directly. Or you
can access my public. What?
You have done SCP before, right?
SCP?
No. Okay, so we'll do that on the next video then. I'll take.
Wait, how can I find my public key again?
So it will be on your home directory and under the .ssh folder.
Oh, okay. On my regular terminal, right?
Yeah.
Like not on the server. Okay. There's nothing on my home directory.
Can you show that terminal real quick, if possible?
Yeah. Let's see how I can do that.
You probably have to change your presentation window, I think.
Okay. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes. So do
All right,
LSLA.
so I'm on my home. Oh, that's why.
Wait. Oh, just do CD. So home might be different in this case. And then do LSLA. So home, that home you are in, I think is a different home. It's not like Linux home. Yeah, there we go. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know what that home
Then,
was. I think that's probably like a specific folder or something. So there you have a .ssh there, and just print out the
yeah,
base or public key of that, not the private key.
okay.
All right, so just do authorize underscore keys. Basically, it's a folder where you can add like your public key pairs. That way, if you have this
Yeah.
through different computers, you can just do it there.
And then do I just have to put, do I just paste it?
Yeah. Let me make sure the server is supporting SSH. All right. Okay, public key authentication is set. So once you do that, let's try testing it. So save it and then exit out of the SSH and try relogging in now.
Oh, is it just exit?
Yeah. And then see if you can just SSH back to it. It still not ask you for a password this time. There you go.
No. Oh, cool. Is it because I'm using my public key, right?
Yeah. So how it works, just for a quick background on that, is whenever you put a public key there, as soon as you do a SSH request, the server will randomly generate a string and encrypt it with your public key, and only your private key can decrypt that. And once it decrypts,
Okay.
it sends it back with a SSN ID on it, and the server will validate that by creating like an MD5 hash.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
once that works, that's how you log in. So it's useful. You still probably will need the password when you do sudo, because sudo is still gonna ask for a password. But other than that, that will allow you to SSH easily to the server now.
Okay, that's really cool.
And that's something also, like, let's say if you had a private key here, right? If someone gets into your server, or if you're able to steal someone's private key, then you don't have to worry about logging in like to their server, because you can now just use their private key to access them. So we'll cover that when we go to hack the box, because there are like about 5 machines that I've looked at that requires those kind of attack. So we'll see them. But I think I covered everything I had on the list today. I'm just going over real quick. Do you have any questions based on anything we looked at?
So far, no.
Okay.
But maybe later I can ask.
Okay.
You.
Yeah, that's fine. So that's why it's good that we recorded this. You can access the video. It should be available within 2 hours. Google takes a little bit.
Okay.
And yeah, and the next one we're gonna spend like 30 minutes just Google searching a lot. After that, we'll move into more tools, exploits, and everything like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rajan.
No problem. Okay.
This is a lot of fun.
And the fun hasn't started yet. This is the
but I got to learn about like the permissions and stuff, and I had like no idea how that used to like work. And actually now like I understand, like, oh, this is what you're doing. Like I get that.
Yeah, so that's why I decided to cover this first.
It's good.
We can jump into like hack the box right away too, but once you get into a box, understanding like how to create this, it's useful to know what to look for, right? Now you know like to look for.
I agree. Yeah.
Specific files. There's actually something I haven't done today. I'll teach that when we get to it. There's one where, you know how we did read, write, execute?
Okay.
You can actually set where every time it runs as root. So if there's any files that you control that runs as root no matter what, then you can exploit it further. So we'll cover that in the future. But for today, this was a lot of info, so that's why I think like we're good at where it is, because I know it was a lot of things. We covered we covered users.
Yeah, it was. But it was a lot of fun.
I'm glad it was fun and not yet. So that's why I tried making it interactive. Because it could be dry if I made it like super lecture-y. So
No, yeah, like when I did it, it made me understand
All right.
more. Like when you asked me to do like the read write permissions, it made more sense
Okay,
afterwards
perfect.
than
That's
before when
good
you
to
were
know
talking.
since
So yeah.
I'm gonna incorporate those kind of settings for all of the other stuff then. Because next week we're gonna write
Okay.
codes as well. So we're gonna do some bash script. That's where all the dollar sign, parentheses,
Okay.
everything will come back again.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much,
No
Rajan.
problem. All right. Peace.
See ya.